And then you said money. How is money going to change? How is money?
Well, poor people don't have bank accounts, and so when they have an emergency, they want to borrow, save. It's very tough. Small transactions, the fees are just too high when you have banks and ATMs and all that. If we take the cell phone and just use digital currency, then you can have all those financial services. So 2 billion people who don't have any kind of bank account will have all sorts of innovative services, help them save, pay for education. And it requires a little bit of work getting the regulation right, getting it to critical mass, getting people to trust it. But the magic of that cell phone with the right software means that people have banking, and that's really big for their lives. So they can borrow when they need to. And
that's interesting, because everyone has a cell phone and a smartphone now.
I am here with Bill Gates. We know him from Microsoft. We now know him for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill, it's great to see you. Great to see you here in particular, because we know the Gates Foundation for its work on infectious diseases, child health, nutrition, agriculture, education, the list goes on. Why does Bill Gates care about finance?
Well, it's all about helping the poorest. And one thing they don't have access to is bank accounts. The fee structure, if you have small amounts of money, is just too high. And we got involved in some traditional microlending, but just didn't see how that could scale up and get inexpensive enough. So now we're involved in trying to make sure we get a very efficient digital payment structure set up for all the poorest in the world to get financial products that work for them.
What are you doing?
The idea is that typically through the cell phone, you should be able to send money to your relatives. You should be able to track the money that's coming in, set aside money to buy seeds the next year. And there are countries where this is beginning to take off. Kenya, Bangladesh, even Somalia, maybe the last country you'd suspect, up in Somaliland, almost half of the GDP is done digitally.
I don't need to tell you that the poor have been unbanked for as long as there have been banks. Why is this time different?
Well, it's really the digital revolution. The poorest have bought cows, stored gold, put currency under their mattress, but they are getting cell phones. And the cell phone capability of identifying who's using the cell phone, letting you look at your spending patterns, that's going to be common sense. People are going to have help and lots of innovative products competing on top of this digital currency platform.
So if technology, mobile phones for example, digital money, helps to increase access to financial services at the same time as it lowers the cost of delivery, why is philanthropy needed?
Philanthropy should just be here to bootstrap this. There are a lot of regulations in this area, and understanding how those regulations can make the cost of remittances, where you're sending money back to your family in your country of origin, how right now that has about a 5% overhead on it. We think we have a role to make sure that, particularly for the smaller transactions, the regulations don't impose those very high costs. Once this gets going, then we'll step up to the applications and say, okay, how does a savings application help the mother make sure money's focused on the kids? How does it help them stay in school, set money aside for the uniform or for good future planning?
Some of what you just described, the need to move money from place to place, the cost of doing so, the overhead, as you put it, makes me think, believe it or not, of Bitcoin, because some people have said, hey, Bitcoin is the answer to those problems. Are you a believer?
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place. And, of course, for large transactions, currency can get pretty inconvenient. The customers we're talking about aren't trying to be anonymous. They're willing to be known. So the Bitcoin technology is key, and you could add to it, or you could build a similar technology where there's enough attribution that people feel comfortable. This has nothing to do with terrorism or any type of money laundering.
What kinds of people or private enterprises right now are helping to solve the same problems you're interested in?
Well, in some countries, the mobile companies have been fantastic. In a few other companies, it's been the banks. In some countries, it's a startup company that's neither a bank nor a mobile company. In Bangladesh, the bKash offering runs across any phone, and they've gotten the regulations so that they have a product that we think will get very, very pervasive. So entrepreneurs are there. The enablement this creates, if you want to put in, say, electricity in a city, collecting your bills is one of the reasons why the underspending of infrastructure in these areas is a real thing holding back the economy.
You mentioned banks. Are the legacy institutions, for the most part, banks, credit card companies, payment processors, friend or foe?
Many of them want to have these additional customers, but they have to embrace the idea that the fees are going to be a lot lower. And so they have to find a way to service these new customers. Now, that means these customers aren't going to be coming into their branches, and they can charge a higher fee when you want to actually cash out. But if it's a pure digital transaction, then, you should be paying, less than 1% to move that money from you to a merchant or from you to a friend, even with meeting all the regulatory requirements.
Bitcoin is something that you've been interested in and supportive of. In fact, one can pay for a tour on Virgin Galactic up to the moon with Bitcoin. I think the Winklevoss twins have said that they would do exactly that. You think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually?
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin, and people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin. Some people have lost money out of Bitcoin.
It's volatile. It's volatile.
Yeah, but it is quite volatile. But when in volatility, people can make money out of volatile situations. Why
was it important for you to give it sort of that stamp of approval, that endorsement, by saying to the Winklevoss twins, yes, you can pay for the ride with Bitcoin?
Because I'm not foolish. I mean, if people have got lots of Bitcoins and they want to go to space, I'd much rather they spent that money on our spaceship. Whether I keep 50 Bitcoins is another matter. But I'd much rather they spent that money on a Virgin Galactic spaceship than on, Elon will be sending people to space one day on Elon's spaceship. So we'll grab the money while it's there.
And so that's another reallocation of trillions of dollars. And then in financial services, Chris talked about it earlier, but Bitcoin and things like it is the equivalent of the red pill. Okay? We are entering a completely world of uncharted water right now.
Have you made any investments in Bitcoin?
So, I own Bitcoin in my hedge fund. I own Bitcoin in my fund. I own Bitcoin in my private account. It is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. Because what you're talking about right now is, for the next 3 to 5 years, an unbelievably better store of value. It is gold 2.0, right? The value of gold that hedges the world economy, about $9 trillion, right? $1,300 an ounce, of which only $100 to $150 is the actual production value. So all the rest of it is imputed, where, Lena, you and I have decided that it's worth $1,300 an ounce. Well, guess what? I can do the same thing with Bitcoin, except now I can do it outside the purview of every single government. It's being used everywhere where you would think it would be used. Russia, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, Venezuela, Argentina, everywhere where you have currency pressure, everywhere where you want to basically shield your assets. And then after that, it'll probably become a payment mechanism. So in all of these three industries, you're talking about trillions of dollars up for grabs. Up for grabs, right? And it's just about trying something.
Right.
And taking a few months to understand what the opportunity is and then hit the scene. And I think that the cool thing is, it's easier to know how to code. It's actually useful in a way where, you can probably hack something together yourself. You can find folks. And so this is the time where people should be trying really big, crazy things.
Well, that's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Chamath.
Kevin O'Leary is our business commentator and the chair of O'Leary Funds. We know he has a thought or two on that. Nice to see you in studio again this morning. Number, what's going on with this huge rise from $20 way up into the hundreds and then a precipitous fall yesterday?
Well, let's remember that until yesterday, most people around the world never heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, for those who don't know it, is basically virtual currency, the same that you get for blasting aliens in a video game, except now traded globally. You can buy Bitcoins with virtually any currency on Earth and convert back into any currency or buy goods and services with it.
Well, we talked about the story. What really got us talking about Bitcoin was the guy in Edmonton who was selling his house for the first time, wanted 400,000 in Bitcoins.
So I think the best way to look at this is a proxy for the mistrust individuals have of central bankers. If you're willing to take Bitcoin as a currency, a virtual Barbie currency to me, it has no basis, no central banker, no hard asset behind it. But if you don't trust any other currency, this is where you go. So essentially what's happening here, Heather, people all around the world are saying, I've had it with my central banker. I don't trust politicians anymore. I'm going to trade with this currency with my computer and my cell phone.
Well, they did that. The reason the Bitcoin shot up was after Cyprus, when they thought the government was going to get their hands on the money in the banks. So people turned to Bitcoins to keep them protected.
So I ignore everything till it gets to $1 billion of market cap.
Okay.
That happened recently with Bitcoin, well over $1 billion in value. So it's here to stay. When you've accumulated a virtual worth of $1 billion and people are willing to trade it and actually buy things with it, turn it back into hard assets. And here's the key, Heather. Owners of hard assets are willing to take Bitcoin. This is here to stay. That's what's going to happen. And no central banker can control it.
But you just called it a Barbie currency. I was going to say, is it all hocus pocus? I mean, is it a legitimate form of currency to trade?
It is. And as soon as it passed $1 billion and someone bought a hard asset with it, in my books, as an investor, it became real. Now, at the same time, because relative to all other currencies, it's tiny. $1 billion is irrelevant in the currency market. Remember, the currency markets are the largest markets on Earth, bigger than commodities, bigger than stocks, bigger than bonds. It's going to grow, but it's going to take a long time. But the key is volatility. Nobody's going to put a large part of their net worth into this thing because it can go up and down 60% in a day, as we saw yesterday. But is it here to stay? Oh, yeah. So will I take 2 or 3% in Bitcoins? I think I might. I'm going to start looking at it.
Are you really? I was going to say, are you into this at all?
I have a basket of currencies, Heather. The way you diversify your risk in currencies is to own many of them. I own euros, I own Swiss francs, I own Canadian dollars, American dollars. And I might start to dabble, a little dabble-dooey of Bitcoin.
That's exactly what I was going to say. All right, thank you for the primer. Kevin O'Leary, our business commentator, the chair of O'Leary Funds. Thanks, Kevin.
Take care.